I'll give the call to the member for Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy Speaker. In the last week, around my electorate and other parts of Sydney's, I've seen some rather large billboards being placed up. And these remind us of the significant problem that we have in our nation of the suicide rates of our returned servicemen. The facts which they quote, that since 1999, while we've had 46 Australian soldiers tragically killed on active service, in the same period of time, we've had 239 returned soldiers take their own lives. In that period, we've lost 5 times as many servicemen on home soil than we've lost on the battlefield. So it's no wonder that so many of our return services groups were so outraged earlier this year when General Morrison, retired former General Morrison, in his Australian of the Year acceptance speech, placed a higher priority on lobbying for the Republican movement and ethnic and gender diversity than he did about this epidemic rate of suicide of troops formerly under his command. Madam Deputy Speaker, these billboards are installed by a charity called the Walking Wounded. And on their website they state, and I quote, "They've been established to assist in the psychological rehabilitation and recovery of returned Australian soldiers who are experiencing hardships after their time in service. Our primary objective is to intervene and prevent the concerning incidents of suicide in the young veteran community through counselling and other support. We show them that there is life after the army." Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm not a psychologist, but I would suggest why we are seeing this significant rate of increased suicides amongst our ex-military personnel that we haven't seen in the past is because in previous wars, in World War I and World War II, it was effectively all in. Everybody would have known somebody that fought in the war. And when the soldiers returned, they would have easily conversed and interacted with other returned soldiers. But today we only have a small fraction of our population that we call on to fight our wars. While we are enjoying a party lifestyle of cafes and restaurants and bars and going out, we are completely isolated from the hardships that our soldiers are undergoing as we call on them to kill in our name. And when the soldiers return, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's clear that we simply don't have enough detraining to equip those soldiers to normal civilian life. There was a recent article in The Australian and they asked the question about the returned soldiers and they said, "If I'm not a soldier, who am I?" And they quoted a returned serviceman and he said, I quote his exact words, he said, "What I did over there," talking about Iraq and Afghanistan, "what I did over there mattered. I had a prominent job. I enjoyed what I did. But when I came home, all that went away. I really didn't have any self-worth anymore. I became just another number. I lost my sense of purpose, my identity." Madam Deputy Speaker, the American author, David Swanson, has talked about this because they're having exactly the same problem in the USA. And he said, "You can't kill and face death and return unchanged to a world in which you are expected to refrain from violence and relax." Madam Deputy Speaker, that brings me to the Vietnam Veterans, or the Veterans Motorcycle Club, formerly the Vietnam Veterans Motorcycle Club, which have operated from premises in my electorate at Menai for a number of years. This club plays a very important role in providing a support network to ensure that our at-risk servicemen, ex-servicemen, are in regular contact with other ex-servicemen who understand what they've been through, what they're experiencing, and help them work through their mental health issues. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm sad to report to the House that the premises that they are currently in, which they've been there for over a decade, premises owned by Ausgrid, Australia's largest electricity supplier, a company that has over $3 billion in revenue, are actually evicting. They're evicting them. Madam Deputy Speaker, they've been given a notice that they need to quit the premises. And Madam Deputy Speaker, unbelievably, they've been asked to quit the premises on the 30th of April, just a few days after Anzac Day. Now, I understand that companies like Ausgrid need to try and make every dollar that they possibly can. I understand that they're trying to fatten up their profits, Madam Deputy Speaker, for a public sale by the New South Wales State Government. But they also have a social responsibility. They even say, Ausgrid, in their statement of business ethics, they talk about, and I quote here, a commitment to conducting business according to the highest ethical standards. And they talk about going on treating all people with respect, dignity, fairness and equity, and being socially responsible. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is not socially responsible to ask a group of ex-servicemen to quit the premises that they are in a few days after Anzac Day. I spent some time on the weekend talking to these ex-soldiers. Madam Deputy Speaker, they told me firsthand that the club had saved their lives. They told me if it wasn't for the club, they would not be alive today. They told me stories about the difficulty that they have fitting back into society after coming back from fighting on our behalf. I spoke to their wives and they told me when their husbands are at that club, they know their husbands are safe. I told from one, the only place he ever gets to sleep soundly after returning from Afghanistan is within the premises of that club. Madam Deputy Speaker, if Ausgrid really need these premises, what they should simply do is give these guys time to try and locate alternate premises. Assist them with their move. Be that good corporate citizen that many of these large companies talk about. We owe it, Madam Deputy Speaker. We owe it to our ex-servicemen. We need to be standing with them. We seriously have a problem, not only here in Australia, but in many of the Western democracies today. We see the similar pattern in the UK. We see a similar pattern in the USA, where there's an epidemic of suicide amongst our ex-servicemen. We need, if we are going to spend billions of dollars, or hundreds of billions of dollars, Madam Deputy Speaker, which we do to protect our troops and our servicemen when they are in the field, we need to do everything we can investing to protect them when they return home. We need to have programs in place so that when they leave the military services, that there are programs equipped to get them back and fit them into society and get them into important jobs, Madam Deputy Speaker. And perhaps those programs almost need to start even before we send them off into conflict. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's very easy to look at the veterans' motorcycle gang and see them with their bike, or what we call bikey patch colour patches, and think these people are outlawed, but they're not, Madam Deputy Speaker. They are people that we in our society owe an obligation to because what they have done for our nation. So I call on Ausgrid, the board and the chairman, to do the right thing by our ex-military personnel, even if it costs a few dollars, Madam Deputy Speaker. That is what the corporate responsibility of our large companies should be there today for. and they could not do anything better than to help the Veterans Motorcycle Club. I thank the House.